We spend our lives clutching, clawing, and chasing. Chasing love, chasing success, chasing certainty in an uncertain world. But the more we grip, the more life slips through our fingers, like trying to grasp water in a clenched fist. And here lies a paradox that most never understand. Everything you want begins the moment you stop trying to possess it. Letting go isn't surrender. It's not defeat. It's the most courageous act a human being can perform. Because to let go means to trust, not the world, not others, but something deeper. It means trusting yourself enough to loosen your grip on control. From the outside, letting go appears passive. But internally, it's a war. A war between the ego, which needs to have, and the soul, which only needs to be. You see, the ego feeds on scarcity. It whispers, if I don't have this, I'm nothing. If I let this go, I'll lose everything. And so, we cling. We cling to toxic relationships, dead dreams, fake identities, because we're terrified of the silence that remains when we release them. But in that silence, something ancient stirs. Carl Jung called it individuation, the death of false self, the shedding of illusions, because only in letting go do we create the space for truth to enter. Most never get here. Most will spend their lives running in circles, trying to fill a void with noise, validation, and distraction, when the only thing that ever worked was stillness. So ask yourself, what are you clinging to? And why? What would collapse if you finally stopped forcing it? And who might you become if you dared to let go? This is not a video about detachment as avoidance. This is about a deeper letting go, the kind that opens the soul and burns the illusion of control. It's not about giving up. It's about giving in to something higher. Welcome to the lesson your ego will resist and your soul has been waiting for. Welcome to Psychra. We are taught from the moment we open our eyes that life is about holding on. Hold on to success. Hold on to love. Hold on to youth, status, identity, certainty. Hold on or lose. This message is everywhere. It infiltrates how we think, how we relate, how we dream. The modern world rewards those who fight harder, run faster, and grip tighter. And so, we begin to believe. Control is the only way to survive. But control is a myth, a mirage constructed by the ego to protect itself from the terrifying truth of impermanence. Everything in this world, every relationship, every achievement, every fleeting moment of validation is temporary. And yet, we treat it all like it belongs to us, as if clinging to it will make it stay. But have you noticed? The more desperately you try to hold on to something, the faster it slips away. The tighter you cling, the more pain you feel when it inevitably leaves. This is not coincidence. It's a cosmic law, because life was never meant to be possessed. It was meant to be experienced. The ego, however, cannot bear this idea. It needs things to be fixed, predictable, stable, because its entire identity is built on the illusion of permanence. So when something threatens that illusion, a breakup, a failure, a loss, the ego doesn't let go. It tightens. It creates narratives. He shouldn't have left me. I deserved that job. This shouldn't have happened to me. But these are just stories. And every story the ego tells is a refusal to surrender, because to surrender means ego death. And the ego will do anything to avoid its own death. Jung understood this. He saw the ego not as the enemy, but as a necessary mask, a functional identity. But the problem arises when we forget it's a mask. We mistake the mask for the face. We believe that we are our achievements, our relationships, our roles. So when one of those things begins to fall apart, we panic, we grasp harder. But this grasping is what kills us, slowly, spiritually. Clinging keeps us in a constant state of fear. Fear of losing, fear of being abandoned, fear of becoming nothing. And so, we settle for things that are already gone. We stay in hollow relationships. We chase dreams that no longer serve us. We repeat cycles that only hurt us. Because we've confused attachment with love. We've mistaken obsession for passion. And we've been taught that to let go is to lose. But the truth? Letting go is the first time you stop losing yourself. It is the moment the false self begins to die. And the real self, the silent observer beneath the noise, begins to breathe. Letting go doesn't mean indifference. It means non-possession. It means loving without ownership, desiring without dependence, creating without attachment to outcome. It means realizing what is meant for you cannot be forced, and what must leave you was never truly yours. There's a quiet power in this kind of release. Not the weak resignation of someone who's given up, but the fierce wisdom of someone who has awakened. Someone who knows that gripping leads to suffering, but surrender leads to truth. This is not an easy path, because it requires facing the parts of you that only feel safe when they're in control. It demands that you sit in the unknown, without distraction, without escape, without someone to blame. But this is where transformation begins. The alchemists called it the nigredo, the blackening, the moment the old self begins to dissolve. Jung called it the night sea journey, the descent into the unconscious, where the ego drowns and the soul awakens. And every time you let go, truly let go, you step into that darkness. But here's the secret. You are not the thing you're losing. You are not the role, the title, the relationship, or the dream. You are the awareness beneath it, the one who watches it all rise and fall. And the more you connect with that deeper self, the more you realize you never needed to cling in the first place, because the real power was never in having. It was in being. Letting go sounds beautiful in theory, but in practice, it feels like dying. Because in many ways, it is. To let go means to release control, not just of outcomes, but of the very identity you've built around them. It means stepping into uncertainty, into the abyss of what you cannot predict, fix, or grasp. And for the ego, this is terrifying. The ego is not interested in growth. It is interested in survival, and it survives through patterns, through narratives, through control, through illusion. Psychologically, resistance is the ego's defense mechanism. It is the barrier between who we are and who we fear becoming. And that fear, at its root, is the fear of non-being. The fear that if we let go of the relationship, the goal, the identity, we will become nothing. But that's not the truth. That's the illusion the ego sells to keep itself alive. In Jungian psychology, this resistance is the unconscious shadow at work. It operates beneath the surface, sabotaging your attempts to grow, heal, or change. You say you want peace, but sabotage every moment of silence. You say you want love, but chase only those who trigger your wounds. You say you want freedom, but cling to the very chains that bind you. Why? Because the familiar, even when painful, feels safer than the unknown. The abusive relationship, the toxic friendship, the unfulfilling job. These things become symbols of identity. They define your place in the world. They tell you who you are, even if who you are is miserable. And to let go of them, it's not just letting go of pain, it's letting go of you, or at least the version of you that has existed through that pain. This is the hidden paradox. We suffer not because we are weak, but because we are loyal. Loyal to the pain that shaped us. Loyal to the story we told ourselves about who we are and what we deserve. To let go is to betray that story. It is to say, maybe I don't have to suffer to be loved. Maybe I'm allowed to change. Maybe this isn't all there is. But such betrayal feels like disloyalty to the self. And so, we resist. We stay in cycles long past their expiration. We cling to people who are already gone. We defend the very patterns that keep us small. Because without them, who are we? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Letting go is how we begin to make the unconscious conscious. It's how we interrupt the cycle, how we step outside the familiar and into the unknown. But make no mistake, this is a spiritual death. And like all deaths, it is painful, messy, disorienting. You will grieve. Not just the thing you're letting go of, but the version of you that needed it. You will feel lost, not because you're broken, but because you're finally walking a path without a script. You will want to go back, because the past feels easier than carving a new identity. But this is the crucible. This is the threshold where the false self dissolves, and the true self begins to emerge. The self that doesn't cling, doesn't chase, doesn't fear. Because it knows everything real will find you. Not when you grasp for it, but when you become still enough to receive it. This is not passivity. This is alignment. To let go is not to stop caring. It's to stop controlling. It's to act with intention, not desperation. To love with depth, not dependency. To move with clarity, not compulsion. And in this space, where the old self dies, something extraordinary happens. You remember who you were before the world taught you to be afraid. You remember that peace is your birthright. That joy is not a prize for suffering. That love is not earned through pain. But this remembering only happens through surrender. Not because surrender gives you control, but because it reveals you never needed control in the first place. Control is what the ego wants, but freedom is what the soul longs for. And the price of that freedom? Everything that is not real. There comes a moment in every journey where the pain of holding on eclipses the fear of letting go. A moment where the suffering can no longer be explained away by love, loyalty, or logic. Where the weight becomes too heavy, the illusions too transparent, and the excuses too thin. And you know, not in the mind, but in the bones. In the silent ache behind the chest, in the exhaustion that sleep cannot fix, in the haunting sense that something about your life just isn't yours anymore. Have you ever felt that? That quiet despair, not loud or chaotic, but constant, like a whisper at the edge of every decision you make. A subtle knowing that you've outgrown something or someone, but keep shrinking yourself to stay. We don't just betray others. We betray ourselves. Every time we say yes when we mean no. Every time we ignore our intuition. Every time we chase a version of happiness that was never meant for us, but was programmed into us by others. Parents, culture, peers, past trauma. They write the script, but you live it. And with each passing day, you lose a little more of yourself trying to fulfill a role that doesn't fit. Here's the brutal truth. Much of what we hold on to is not love, but fear disguised as devotion. You don't stay because it's right. You stay because you're afraid to be wrong, afraid to be alone, afraid to be judged, afraid to admit that the story you invested so much in was never yours to begin with. But you're not alone in this. We've all clung to sinking ships because we feared drowning more than we feared the water. We've all held on to suffering because it felt familiar. We've all confused persistence with self-worth, believing that to let go is to fail, to be weak, to be unlovable. But ask yourself, what if letting go is not weakness, but wisdom? What if the bravest thing you can do is not endure, but release? You're not here to prove your strength through pain. You're here to remember your freedom through clarity. And clarity begins with one raw, terrifying question. What am I still holding on to that is holding me back? Pause for a moment. Let that question echo in your mind. Is it a relationship, a belief, a wound you refuse to heal because it gives you a sense of identity? Who would you be without that story? Would you finally be free to breathe, to rest, to love without bargaining your soul? Here's the paradox. The more we cling, the more life resists. The more we chase, the more it slips away. Because obsession is not love, and control is not security. So many of us are exhausted, not because we're doing too much, but because we're gripping too tightly to people who left, to past versions of ourselves, to dreams that no longer serve us. And we wonder why nothing flows, why nothing sticks, why everything we want feels one step out of reach. It's because we're trying to bend reality to our will instead of aligning ourselves with truth. And truth is this: what is meant for you does not require you to lose yourself to have it. It doesn't require convincing, chasing, or grasping. It doesn't demand your soul in exchange for crumbs of validation. It meets you in stillness, not chaos. So, I want to ask you directly, from one soul to another, what are you afraid to let go of? What are you pretending not to know? What version of yourself are you protecting, even if it's killing you slowly? If something came to mind just now, don't dismiss it. Write it down, sit with it, and when you're ready, let it go. You don't need to carry what was never yours to begin with. You don't need to earn what should come from love. You don't need to control what was never in your hands. Now, if this message is resonating with you, if it feels like I'm speaking to something you haven't been able to say out loud, then tell me in the comments, I'm ready to let go. Not for me, for you, because there is something powerful about claiming your truth in the open. Something freeing about naming the lie you've been living. And if you haven't yet, take a moment to like this video. Not out of obligation, but because these ideas need space in the world. Because somewhere, someone is holding on too tightly to a life that's already trying to let them go. They need this message. Maybe you once did too. There is a strength that doesn't roar. A kind of power that doesn't demand or fight, but simply lets go. Not out of weakness, but because it knows what is real cannot be lost. In a world obsessed with control, dominance, and certainty, surrender sounds like a threat. We equate it with giving up, with defeat, with being passive. But that is a lie whispered by the ego, the part of you that is terrified of not being in control. The truth is far more liberating. Surrender is not the end of effort. It is the beginning of alignment. Because what you chase out of desperation will never fulfill you. What you try to force into place will never bring peace. And what you hold with clenched fists will only slip through your fingers faster. Ask yourself, when has holding on ever made love stay? When has obsessing ever made opportunity last? When has fear ever created freedom? We are conditioned to believe that value lies in striving, that worth is earned through constant movement. But life, real life, doesn't respond to force. It responds to presence. Think of nature. The river doesn't fight the current. It flows. The tree doesn't cling to its leaves in autumn. It sheds them with grace. The moon doesn't apologize for its phases. It waxes and wanes in perfect rhythm. There is no striving, no forcing, no begging, only harmony, only trust, only surrender to a greater intelligence that does not need to be micromanaged. What if your life could be like that? What if letting go didn't mean failure, but faith? Faith that you are not here to control the universe, but to co-create with it. Faith that what leaves makes space for what's coming. Faith that what's meant for you is already on its way, if only you would stop blocking the door. But here's the paradox the ego will never tell you. The more you let go, the more power you have. Because real power is not about having control over outcomes. It's about mastery over your inner state, over your reactions, over your choices, over your alignment with truth. Surrender is not the loss of identity. It is the shedding of false identities, the masks, the roles, the illusions you cling to out of fear. It's choosing authenticity over attachment, clarity over chaos, stillness over striving. And when you let go, something magical happens. Suddenly, people respect your space. Opportunities flow to you without desperation. Your energy becomes magnetic, not needy. Because you're no longer broadcasting lack. You're radiating trust. Trust in your path. Trust in divine timing. Trust that you are enough, even without proving, performing, or pleasing. This is not passive. This is not blind optimism. This is spiritual intelligence. This is the inner knowing that you don't need to manipulate life to receive what is yours. And this level of peace, this quiet confidence, cannot be faked. It's the kind of energy that makes people feel something they can't quite name. A calm intensity, a grounded presence. It comes from having walked through fire and come out clean, not because you fought harder, but because you surrendered deeper. To surrender is to burn the script you were handed and trust that something more real will emerge in its place. To stop rehearsing the version of yourself you think will be loved, and finally just be. Raw, unfiltered. Enough. Letting go is not a single act. It is a practice, a way of being, a daily decision to release attachment to what is dying and open to what is being born, and it will scare you. Because letting go means letting die your false self, letting die the stories that comforted you, letting die the illusions that gave you a sense of safety, even if they suffocated your soul. But in that death is your rebirth. You will realize you were never chasing a person, a job, a goal. You were chasing a feeling of peace, of being seen, of being whole. And when you let go, you'll see that those feelings were never out there. They were inside you, waiting for you to stop outsourcing your worth, waiting for you to come home. So I ask you now, are you willing to let go? Not just of the thing, but of who you became trying to get it. Because that version of you, the one who begged, who chased, who grasped in desperation, she or he doesn't need fixing. They need releasing. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be free. And freedom begins the moment you loosen your grip and breathe. So here you are, at the edge of a truth you've always felt but rarely dared to live. You were never meant to cling. You were never meant to beg for what aligns or shrink for what doesn't. You were meant to open your palms and let the universe place what belongs. Because real transformation doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from trusting it. Think about the moments that changed you the most. Were they planned? Were they scripted, controlled, micromanaged into perfection? Or did they break you first? Did they shatter something false, a belief, an identity, an attachment, so something truer could take its place? This is the sacred brutality of surrender. It humbles the ego, it silences the noise, and it awakens the soul. There is no greater power than the person who has learned to walk away from what no longer serves, to release the hand that won't hold them, to mourn the fantasy they created, and meet reality with open arms. Because when you let go, you don't lose power. You reclaim it. You reclaim the energy you gave to fear. You reclaim the time you gave to proving yourself. You reclaim the identity you buried under masks and performances. And from that reclamation comes rebirth. You stop chasing people who don't see you. You stop shrinking for love that feels like war. You stop confusing chaos for passion and wounds for worth. And in that stillness, you finally hear it. Yourself, your authentic voice, your unfiltered desire, your inner knowing that whispers, you don't have to chase anything that's real. That voice has been there all along, buried under noise, drowned by striving, but it's never left you. And now, because you've let go, it can rise. This is not a soft ending. This is a quiet victory, the kind no one sees, but everything changes because of it. You may lose some things. You may feel the ache of absence, but what remains is clean, sacred, true. And what comes next is no longer born of desperation, but of alignment. So when you wake up tomorrow, or tonight in the silence, and feel the familiar temptation to grasp again, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, am I acting from trust or from fear? Because fear will always ask you to beg. Trust will always ask you to release. And when you choose trust, truly, you open the door to everything you once tried to force. the people who respect your silence, the love that honors your wholeness, the opportunities that arrive without needing to be chased. That's the paradox. When you no longer need it to happen, it happens. Because your worth is no longer entangled in the outcome. This is not the path of most people, but it's the path of the awakened. It is the walk of those who no longer settle for survival, but choose sovereignty. You are not here to live a life of clinging. You are here to become the space that life flows through. Unattached, unburdened, undeniably powerful in your peace. And if something leaves you now, let it. If something ends, honor it. If someone cannot meet you in your fullness, bless them and release them. Because your life is not a storage space for the things that fear convinced you to hoard. It is a sacred vessel, only meant to hold what truly aligns. So, if this message struck something deep in you, a realization, a grief, a release, I want to hear from you. Tell me, what are you letting go of? Write it in the comments. Not for me, but for you. To give it form, to set it free. And if this video helped you, if it cracked something open, let that be a sign to keep walking this path with me. Like this video, not just for the algorithm, but to affirm to yourself, I choose to trust. Subscribe if you haven't, so you don't lose these moments of clarity in the chaos of noise. And, most of all, share this. With a friend who's holding on too tight, with a lover who's forgetting their worth, with a part of you that still needs permission to surrender. Because freedom isn't given. It's chosen again and again. And you just chose it. Let go, breathe. Watch what rises. Welcome to Psychra.